Steven Jackson is not happy with Stephen A. Smith right now. In fact, a lot of people aren't happy with Stephen A. Smith right now. Anyway, do y'all know former NBA star Steven Jackson? He's a champion. He's a Texas boy. He came to prominence a few years ago, post NBA career, for his support of George Floyd, who was his friend. And he's part of All the Smoke, a wonderful podcast with Matt Barnes. Shout out to Matt Barnes. Shout out to my brother Steven Jackson. He's not happy with Stephen A. Smith like a lot of people. He went on Instagram and he called out Stephen A. Smith after that awkward on-air exchange between Stephen A. Smith and Alexis Ohanian, who's the husband of Serena Williams. I love saying the husband of Serena Williams. It's kind of dope. If you remember, Ohanian basically says, Stephen A., you're not married, so you shouldn't be speaking on marriage because you have no idea what you are talking about. Because he said back after the Super Bowl that if he was married, his wife wouldn't be trolling her ex, referring to Serena Williams appearing in Kendrick Lamar's Super Bowl halftime show where she was crip walking and such. Ohanian called him out. It was a nice moment. He tried to get his lick back. I didn't love the execution of it, but whatever. Stephen A. Smith took it like a G. He went on his own show and said, look, he ain't got nothing against him. He's happy that he playfully confronted him. I don't think Stephen A. was happy, but I don't think he was tripping either. No one's happy when they get confronted on their own show. And I don't think they had that in the plan. So it is what it is. Anyway, Steven Jackson then went on air and offered his own take on this. He said, come on, Stephen A., you get loud and all in your feelings about Brian when talking to a black billionaire, but when you're talking to a white billionaire, you're humble. And you come back on your show talking real respectful, mild manner. Right, bro, listen, and you dogging the black women. Stay out of politics and stick to talking about sports you never played, all right? Just stick to doing that, bro. We're not going to vote for you. I heard you talking about running. Don't do that, bro. We're not going to vote for you. No. We're not. You don't have the same energy for other people, but you get a lot of energy for Brian and black women and not everybody else. The reason this is happening is a few things. One, Stephen Jackson and Stephen A. Smith have a long-standing kind of tension because Stephen Jackson just doesn't rock with Stephen A., and he's pretty honest about that. The other piece of this that I think is important to think about is that in recent months, and this is what Stephen Jackson's alluding to, Stephen A. has gotten more and more involved in politics. He's gotten more and more involved in the American political scene, specifically everyday electoral and partisan politics. A week ago, or 2 weeks ago now, he criticized Jasmine Crockett, saying that the way she talks, the way she presents herself, while being very, very intelligent, and she's saying she's very intelligent. However, she needs to focus on helping her district and not criticizing Trump in the way that she does, because it's not helpful to her congressional district. He has said things that don't defend Donald Trump, but certainly offer a different perspective than mainstream liberal Democrats. Would I say Stephen A. leans to the right? No, but he certainly hovers around the center, and that pisses people off. Points were made by Stephen Jackson. He said, look, white billionaires, you ain't saying much. Black billionaires like Brian, you got something to say. But I don't think it's about race there. I think it's about political position. I think Stephen Jackson's observing something that he's right about, that Stephen A. is making different choices about what he talks about, when he talks about, how he talks about it. I think he's right to say that Stephen A. is making some political decisions. I think he's right to say that those political decisions are based on career aspirations. I think Stephen Jackson's right about all of that. Where I disagree with my brother Stephen Jackson, Stack, we call him, so many Stevens in this conversation. I think where I disagree with him is, I think Stephen A. is, I'm not even sure Stephen is running for office, but I do think he's making some political calculations. I think he recognizes the fact that as he grows out of the sports arena exclusively and says, I'm going to move into politics and I'm going to have this political show and I'm going to do all this stuff on these different platforms, he understands that liberal media outlets like Air America didn't last long. Right-wing media outlets last forever. People watch Fox News at a whole different rate than they watch MSNBC. Stephen A. is leaning into the right-wing audience. I don't think he's being dishonest. I think he believes this stuff. I don't think he's being disingenuous. I think he's articulating the positions that he really has. I think where it gets interesting is Stephen A. is an independent. He does have positions that might lean a little bit more toward liberals, might lean more toward conservatives. I just think he's not saying his liberal positions as loudly right now because that's not good for business. And I think he's saying I think he's not saying I think he is saying his conservative positions more because they are good for business right now. Ifeolu Claire, what up, Noob, says, but what makes Stephen A. Smith think he's an authority? You've never represented anyone. Interesting point. But I don't want to hold Stephen A. to a different standard than I hold all these other pundits. None of these pundits, most of these pundits, have never had jobs outside of punditry. Most of these people have never been political leaders. Most of them have never run for office. Most of them have never run a campaign. I don't want to hold Stephen A. to a different position or a different standard than I hold other people. But I think it's fair to say Stephen A. ain't done none of that. And I do think we need to get to a moment where we start to look for expertise again, where we shouldn't be deferring to anybody with a microphone to give us our political perspectives. I think Stephen A. would agree with that. I think he would say, I'm just offering my opinion. I'm not telling you to take it as the Holy Grail. And I think that's the right way to think about this. As far as specifically the Jasmine Crockett critique, look, there are critiques to be made of Jasmine Crockett. Why do I say that? Well, because there's critiques to be made of all of us. However, there's no evidence that Jasmine Crockett isn't serving her district or doing what her district wants her to do. And yes, her job is to represent those 750,000 people in her congressional district outside of Houston or in Houston, but it's also to be part of the U.S. Congress, not the state legislature, but the U.S. Congress. Part of their job is to be part of a system of checks and balances that holds the executive branch accountable. We might not like the fact that she curses. We might not like the fact that she be dragging Donald Trump, or we might love it. Regardless, it is her job to do it. And I ain't heard many complaints from her district. So I don't think we should be imposing or adding critiques to her that aren't legitimate or that aren't representative of the base that we ostensibly are representing. I also do think this thing about who we pick on and why, like, why pick on Jasmine Crockett? And pick on is not the right word. Why focus on Jasmine Crockett? There's so many people out here destroying the world. The world is on fire. The country is on fire. Why focus on one of the people who's offering loyal opposition rather than somebody who's actually doing the damage? I don't think it's because he hates Black women. I don't think it's anything like that. I think that's unfair. I think it's because, again, it's bad for business. And if we keep making our political decisions and assessing our choices about political commentary based on whether it's good or bad for business, I think we do ourselves a disservice.